Today's recipe dates back to the Middle Ages and it is still just as popular. With a delightful chewy inside and a slightly crunchy outside with strong almond flavor, these cookies go great with a cup of coffee or tea. Join me as I make Bitterkoekjes. Hi, I'm Toine and welcome to my kitchen. If you're new to this channel, I focus on cooking foods from my home country, the Netherlands, and some of its former colonies such as Indonesia. Bitterkoekjes used to be called trouwkoekjes because they were served whenever a couple would go into ondertrouw. Ondertrouw is when a couple formally registers that they are going to get married. Now, why were these cookies part of that? Is because they reflected the journey of a married couple with both sweet and bitter moments. Sweet from the sugar and bitter from the almonds. To make bitterkoekjes, you will need 155 grams of powdered sugar, 170 grams of blanched almonds, 56 grams of egg white divided in two. It's about the egg white of 2 large eggs, 8 grams of almond extract, and even though it isn't on the counter, you will also need a pinch of salt. Because this recipe comes together rather quickly, I am already preheating my oven to 190 degrees Celsius, 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have my food processor ready with the metal cutting blade. Because I don't need the big bowl, mine has the small insert, so that is what I'm using. If you just have one size food processor, you can just use that. I'm going to start by adding the powdered sugar to the bowl, and I'm going to try not to make a big cloud of powdered sugar. And try to get it in the bowl and not on top of the counter. Okay. I'm going to add my almonds to this. And I think one of them escaped. Also going to add a pinch of salt. Put the lid on, and I'm going to pulse this until it is a fine powder. You do have to check it from time to time to make sure it is the right consistency. You want to make sure there are no big pieces of almond in here. It really needs to look like a flour. So we're not quite there yet. Gonna pulse it some more. Let's check it again. All right, it is looking nice and fine. Normally when you are pulsing or you're putting nuts in a food processor and you want to turn it into powder, you want to make sure that you don't go too long and turn it into butter. The powdered sugar really prevents that from happening, so that is not a big worry here. I think this looks pretty good. So now I am going to add the almond extract and half of the egg whites. We're going to pulse it again. Normally, the way I check it is put a little bit on the spatula and see if it falls off. This is too dry, so we're going to add just a little bit more of the egg whites and see if that is enough. The reason I don't add all the egg whites at once is because you want to make sure that the dough is not too wet and too runny. You want it to be pipeable, but not so thin that it won't hold the shape when you pipe it. So if I look at this, it's still a little bit too dry. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the egg white, or the rest of the egg white, and pulse it one more time. So checking this, it's still a little bit too thick, so I'm going to add a little bit of water in there, a little bit at a time, and I'm going to pulse it again. Let's check it. I'm going to put some on my spatula and just let it hang. It should kind of fall off in globs. And it is. Let's move on to the next step. I hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, please click the like and subscribe button. It will really help our channel. And if you want YouTube to notify you whenever we post a new video, click the bell. I have my piping bag fit with a 2 centimeter tip, 7/8 of an inch. I think it is a 2A tip. I'm going to fold over the bottom and put this in a large cup to keep it steady and make it easier to fill. Fold it over. I've removed the blade from the bowl and I'm now going to put this into my piping bag. This used to be made with bitter almonds, hence the name Bitterkoekjes, but that required a special process to get rid of the cyanide. So nowadays it's almost always made with regular almonds. If you buy them in the grocery store pre-packaged, to save money, they also use apricot pits instead of almonds in there. Apparently it has a very similar flavor. So let me make sure I get all the dough out into my bag. Okay, I think I've gotten everything in here that I can. Let's move this out of the way. Get my cookie sheet. I have parchment paper and I printed out a piece of paper with 3 centimeter circles on there to kind of help me make sure these are all the same size. Okay, let's take the piping bag out. I'm going to use my dough scraper to push it all to the front. Okay, I'm going to twist it and I'm going to pipe it into 3 centimeter circles. It's okay if it has that little point at the top. We'll be pushing that down at the end. You want to leave some space in between because they will spread in the oven. So I have about 1.5 centimeters, maybe 2 centimeters in between these circles. We're just going to keep piping them until all the dough is used up. It smells so good. I love the smell of almonds. I'm going to move my little template a little bit. Make sure we get everything to the bottom. Don't want any of this to go to waste. And I think this is going to be the last one. Okay. Now I'm going to get a little bit of water so I can dampen my finger and push all these little points down. So a little bowl of water, dampening my finger and just pushing down the points. Oh, that looks like a witch's hat. These made 37 for me. One of them is kind of tiny. It all depends on how consistent you are in the size of each one of these. Since this dough has a high amount of sugar, there is a risk of burning the bottom of the cookie. So what I do is actually put this cookie sheet on top of another one and put it in the oven. This second cookie sheet acts as a buffer to prevent the bottom from cooking or baking too fast. I'm going to bake these in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes. You're looking for a light golden brown color. You want the outside to be crispy and the inside to still be a little bit chewy, but you can't see that, so I typically go by color. Because of the sugar content in the dough, these cookies have a tendency to stick to the parchment paper. To make it easier to release them, I have wet a towel, and it is not dripping wet, but it's more than just damp, that I'm putting down on the counter. When the cookies come out, I'll put the parchment paper directly on here. The heat from the cookies will create a little bit of steam from the water in the towel, which will help release them from the parchment. My cookies are done, and now I'm just going to slide the parchment paper onto the wet towel, and we are going to let them cool completely before we give them a try. The Bitterkoekjes are done cooling off, so I'm just going to put them on a plate. Just a small twist takes them or gets them off the sheet. You can see the bottom is not burnt. Just gonna do that real quick. Trying to make it look pretty on the plate. My grandma in Utrecht used to have these cookies pretty much every time I went to visit her. So these definitely remind me of her. Okay, finally time to try one out. So you should be able to hear that it's crispy on the outside. Eet Smakelijk. Oh, that's flavor. Adding that almond extract really intensifies that almond kind of slightly bitter flavor. Of course, there's plenty of sugar in there. So let's take a look at the inside. You can see that it's still nice and soft, even though the outside is crispy. These cookies are gluten-free, so if any of your friends have celiac or are gluten sensitive, they can enjoy these cookies as well. To store them, put them in an airtight container. It will change the texture slightly, but they will maintain that chewiness that is so characteristic. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe button and don't forget to share it with your friends. If you have any questions or memories about eating bitter cookies, please post them in the comments below. I'll put the written recipe on my website, Toineskitchen.com, in both metric and imperial measurements. You can also follow me on social media. If you make this recipe, I would love it if you can take a picture and post it on Instagram with the hashtag Toineskitchen. I will share it in my story and on my website. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.